action genre is back in full motion. Has been for quite a while now. Back in the 80s up until the late 90s, we saw a golden age of action cinema, ranging from Aliens, Predator, GoldenEye, Hard Boiled, The Killer, Terminator 1 and 2, Commando, Rambo First Blood, Die Hard, and more. The same can also be said for action games as well, more specifically in the shooter genre. Doom Eternal brought the continual reinvigoration that its predecessor provided, bringing a much needed revival to the style of gameplay that was amazing. You have a gun, people that want to kill you, and it's up to you to either kill them first or let them do the same to you. When you create a setting and a story, you have to also consider whether the action will do the talking or the vocal cords. In this case, we have the former that takes the initiative, in the guise of a retro-inspired bullet time FPS, Maximum Action. Maximum Action takes the premise of just about any action flick you have seen in the 80s or the 90s, and frames you as your own action star, so to speak. You can create your own character by giving him a name alongside a studio name, reinforcing the idea that you're more or less shooting your own action movie within a game. The game doesn't have a story in the conventional sense you would expect. It's best to consider it as a sandbox experience, where you make your own fun using the levels already made for you, as well as the level editor that lets you create your own, and publish them on the Steam Workshop, as well as weapon mods, and other things. Each level is framed around a VHS tape collection. They're all labelled with their own names, and you select the one that looks appealing. As you scroll through them, a sense of familiarity should come across your mind. Each level is reminiscent of iconic action movies. If you're a film buff, you'll probably know the answer to them already as soon as you see them. But if you come from a different background or are not familiar with the game's inspirations, then you won't appreciate it as much. When you select the level, it loads up like a VHS tape, and then transports you into the level, showing the main star of the show, you, and the studio behind it, which is also you. Then, the real fun begins. From the streets of Hong Kong, to a tea house, a restaurant, a hospital, a saloon, a sweaty jungle, and more. Enemies are in place to play their part, and you have a flotilla of weapons to play with. The meat and potatoes of Maximum Action is the total freedom you have to combo your weapons in any way you wish, dual wielding any weapon no matter how big or small. You want an Uzi and an RPG at the same time? Go for it. Or how about 2 RPGs? You get the idea. The enemies more or less zerg rush you once they're aware of your presence, but I would like to say that the game at this juncture does have this disruptive point in the levels where the enemies spawn, freezing the game a second before. Personally, I find this a bit jarring, may need to be looked at during its continual development, and yeah, the game is still in early access, so keep that into account. Generally speaking, I avoid early access games in general. Titles like DayZ have made me wary of the concept. I'm usually more than happy to wait for the full release, because by that time, I'll have a first-hand experience of a more updated and complete product. But in the case of Maximum Action, I made an exception. There's plenty of work to be done here, but the game has a great deal to offer already, starting with the amazing gameplay, which I will now dig into. Try to think of Max Payne for a second. The bullet time and diving where you're dodging bullets like raindrops, except for one thing. You're shooting a movie with those abilities, and in first person at the same time. And that's what Maximum Action is. Max Payne if it was an FPS. You have a kick and a drop kick to disarm and knock down enemies, and the drop kick itself can propel you back, giving you slightly more airtime. Speaking of which, you can jump, but you can also dive and drop kick. And when you add in the slow motion ability, you can pull off a good number of insanely good shots and moves. Of course, it's possible to not use the slow motion ability and get by, but it is a lot harder, especially with the enemy placements that have bullets that travel pretty fast. Slow motion has a timer that decreases by its usage. It replenishes when you're out of combat, or when you kill an enemy without it. But if you're already a good shot and can clear rooms rather quickly, you'll generally get by while still having enough slow motion. In my case, it's hardly been an issue so far. The levels themselves play out the same. Some of them have different enemy designs, a boss fight featuring very familiar characters, their own weapons you get to play with, and different themes altogether. Maximum Action's variety is great, particularly the jungle tape, which is the biggest level out of them all, and the most fun I would say. In that level, you get given a motorcycle and a tank, and the best part is, if you use the tank, you can also use your primary weapons alongside the cannon, which is just badass. And the same applies with the motorcycle too. However, I'm not too big on the tank controls personally, more specifically when turning. You turn by aiming the cannon itself, and there's a delay in the tank's turn. I would have preferred WSAD style steering while aiming with the cannon. Would have been much easier in my opinion, but I suppose it's a matter of preference. The physics with both vehicles are a bit wonky and you can sometimes get the vehicle stuck on gaps or uneven terrain, but you can push the vehicle by moving towards it, which is a blessing in disguise. At this juncture, the jungle segment is the only level that experiments with vehicles. The rest are just shooting galleries for you to empty out. When you complete a mission, a quick credit sequence initiates, followed by the option to continue to the next tape, replay, retry, or exit to the menu. They're all quite short, but are well made and feel authentic towards the things that inspired the creator to develop Maximum Action, a game that's ultimately a love letter to the golden age of action cinema. The graphics have a polished PS1 feel to them, while not looking like complete shit. My rig didn't really have any issues running it, and it ran smooth more or less. On some occasions, it would get choppy when there were too many enemies, but like I said, it's still early access, so technical issues are still being assessed and ironed out. I hope so anyway. Sound is a pretty mixed bag here. Weapons with silencers sound amazing, even invoking a similar sound to the Silence PP7 and the D5K from GoldenEye 64. The rest could use more of a punchier sound to them. I like it when weapons have a more explosive and bombastic sound personally, and it's just not here. The sound quality is fine, and I haven't heard any clipping as of yet. I just think that the arsenal needs a bit of a sound overhaul. It doesn't need to be a popping sound like in real life, it just needs more of a punch, like something you would hear in a blockbuster action movie, since that is the template for this game's setting. Maximum Action is a really cool gun-fu style shooter that has a lot of potential, with an endless level of replayability thanks to the limitless wielding of your arsenal, the bullet time and the diving mechanics that let you pull off some amazing moves, and also the Steam Workshop integration, where more content is being produced. The CEO of Balloon Moose Games, George Mandel, has done fans of old school action movies a service here, and the work he's done by himself on this project is commendable. But the game is far from finished, and I hope the goal for a fully fledged product comes true someday, and at this juncture, Maximum Action has a really solid foundation. Thank you for watching.